Hello everyone, this is NPC's Economics. In the last video, we used Robert Shiller's bubble checklist to analyze whether there's a housing bubble in the United States. Today, we will talk about the other checklist and what these housing bubble indicators are actually saying about the United States housing market. But before that, I want to acknowledge that my last video got more views than I expected, and I thank you all who have tuned in to watch that video. So, who was Hans Lind? He is a professor at the School of Architecture and the Built Environment at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. Although he's not an economics professor and certainly not as well known as Robert Shiller, one of his most well-known and widely cited papers is his theory of price bubbles in housing markets, which was published during the global financial crisis in 2008. Here is Hans Lind's system of bubble indicators. Interest payments in relation to income for home buyers. Nominal and real interest payments in relation to income have been increasing. In addition, nominal and real interest payments in relation to income would have been increasing if historical interest rate levels were applied. Although the price-to-income ratio is a popular indicator that economists use when evaluating the housing market, Lind argues that it is not so much about the price of housing to income, but rather the housing expenditure and income. Basically, his argument is that people care more about what's their monthly payment relative to their income. Second, interest costs are a large part of the housing expenditure, and a possible indicator is the relationship between the nominal interest payments of the average buyer and their income. If this is significantly higher in the earlier periods, it will indicate that the buyers are acting in a non-sustainable way. I suspect this is even more so in the United States because of the 30-year fixed mortgage scheme, which is not something that really exists outside of the US. 2. The easier it is to increase supply, the more likely it is that the price increase is part of a bubble. If interest rates fall, it would theoretically lead to an increasing demand for housing. In the short run, with given supply, this leads to higher prices. The higher prices would then lead to increased profitability in housing construction and thus increased supply. The prices fall to a level that is determined by the level of construction cost. 3. Buyers expect that prices will continue to rise or stabilize on a level that is much higher than historical trends, and believe that even in a medium-term perspective, let's say 3 to 5 years, investing in housing is almost risk-free. Basically, people expect increasing home prices, even though prices are already pretty high and have increased a lot. Many on the market believe that homes only go up and will stabilize on a level that is very high from a historical perspective, and they tend to underestimate the risk from housing investments. 4. People are entering the ownership earlier or at a higher quality level, and tend to choose riskier financing alternatives than earlier, and are amortizing less than earlier. This obviously doesn't mean people are buying at an earlier age or becoming more qualified buyers, but rather, if the cost of waiting on the sideline becomes too high, then people become impatient and end up buying something at a higher level than they intended, leading to a fear of missing out. One example is people skipping the step of buying a starter home altogether, as there are so few of them available, and the competition tends to be much higher than for bigger homes. Also, the risk for falling prices would be higher if households choose more risky financing alternatives. A prominent example would be the subprime mortgages in the 2000s, where interest payments and amortization were reduced the first years. 5. Banks are increasing or at least not decreasing loan-to-value ratios for buyers on the housing market when prices increase. Also, banks become more liberal when judging the creditworthiness of households. It takes two to tango. More risky household behavior is matched by more risky bank behavior. When the focus is on the housing market, easy lending should firstly be reflected in the loan-to-value ratios. During a housing price boom, if the loan-to-value ratios also increase, all else equal, then that should be an indicator of too easy lending. 6. Speculative behavior. A bubble exists if a large share of home buyers than usual are planning to sell rather quickly again. When housing prices are increasing rather quickly, and if there are strong expectations of future price increases, then some people might see an opportunity for quick profits by buying an apartment or a house and then selling it again rather soon. This is basically the opposite of catching a falling knife. We see this with flippers all the time, where a house is immediately be back on the sale a few months after purchase at a much higher price. It should be noted that what Hans Lind developed is not a checklist, but rather a system of bubble indicators. As I showed in the previous video, Robert Shiller's checklist only discusses the increase in the prices and the agents' behaviors that drive the increase. The main difference with Lind's system of indicators is the view of a bubble that exists as a whole, that is, with both an increase and then a subsequent decrease of the price, in which the latter was basically absent in Shiller's checklist. Therefore, according to Lind, there is a bubble if the price of an asset first increases dramatically and then almost immediately falls dramatically. On the other hand, the role of media, that is, mainstream media and social media frenzy, is pretty much absent in Lind's bubble indicators. But before we make a conclusion, let's take a step back and actually think about this. Just what is a bubble exactly? A bubble typically starts in a rather extreme boom period that has lasted for a comparatively long period. It can also be hypothesized that it is a period where the macroeconomic policies have been rather lax. But alas, not all bubbles are the same. Some could be purely speculative bubbles, where people believe the price is too high, but the price will continue to rise for some time, and that it will be possible to sell with a profit before the price falls. Some could be irrational expectations bubble, where people become overly optimistic and think that asset price will grow rapidly over a long period of time. And finally, some could be irrational institutions bubble, where buyers don't expect to take the losses that occur when prices fall dramatically, and the lenders also expect to be able to shift the losses to someone else. Perhaps the government would bail them out. This is a classic principal agent's problem in economics. It is important to differentiate between a true bubble and an overpricing in the housing market. An asset can be overpriced without there being a bubble, but you cannot have a bubble without an asset being overpriced. If prices slowly decline or stagnate in real terms, while wages slowly catch up, then according to Lind, it is not really a bubble. Housing supply is highly inelastic, and even if housing can be built rather quickly, but since housing is a durable good, old housing does not disappear quickly. But the discussion so far omits the impact of government intervention and red tape. Zoning laws and NIMBYism are effective in slowing the pace of housing being built. Just look at California, for example. But maybe that's another discussion for another video. So what do you think? If you liked the video, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. And let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye!